welcome back to my channel. Today we are doing a little reading vlog. We are reading Blood of a Bright Heaven by ML Wang. I'm buddy reading this with Melanie over at a dark corner of the library, and I'm very excited because I've heard only good things about this book, which is also a bit dangerous because that puts the expectations quite high. But I know almost nothing about this book. I think the gist of the plot is that we have our main character who dreams of being a mage in this fantasy world, but it's a very patriarchal society, and so she has to work her butt off to make it, and she does, but she's also not very respected by her peers, and so she's assigned an assistant who I think is a janitor, so he's not supposed to be very helpful, but I believe he kind of defies expectations as well. That's pretty much all I know. I'm going into this blind, but I'm very excited to see what it is. I've heard, again, very good things also from this author's first novel, which I haven't read, but I'm very curious about. Today is Friday, and I've had a bit of a busy day, although a very, very good day. This morning I was at the pottery workshop for a class, which was really fun, and then I came back home, had a late lunch, did some walking. I'm trying to walk at least 1 hour a day, so I did that, took a shower, baked a banana bread for this evening because I have friends over for our D&D campaign. If you're into Dungeons and Dragons, this is my second campaign, and I'm playing a Kalashtar cleric character named Mihail, who is following the shadow path, if that rings a bell. It's been really fun. It's my first time playing a magic wielder or a spellcaster, and I'm really enjoying it, but it's a bit challenging. It's almost 5 p.m. now, and they're coming at 6:30, so I would like to get in about an hour of reading, but it's a bit of a tight schedule. Also, my office is an absolute mess. Normally I would have a little sequence in the vlog of a time lapse of me tidying and cleaning up, but I don't really have the time today. So it's clothes that I need to put away that tend to leave on my reading chair that are now on the floor, and I also inherited all the family photos that I need to digitize. It's going to be a huge amount of work, so that's also kind of all over the place and just like random mess that I haven't been cleaning up recently, so forgive the mess and let's dive into reading. It's really cool. Like, there is this typewriter looking device that seems to be a magical kind of instrument. I'm very curious to learn more about this, and this edition also comes with a map, so we're off to a great start. Well, I just finished the first chapter, and wow, that's a very strong start. I was already teary-eyed. I was a bit surprised because we are not starting with the expected main character, but it was an excellent start. I think we get already a lot of world building, but weaved in a natural way into the story. It's quite punch to start with, and the writing is gorgeous. So I'm looking forward to reading more because yeah, it's starting off very well and a very strong foot. So I hope it keeps going, but from what I've heard, it should. So this might be a new 5-star read, which would be excellent. Good morning. It is Sunday. I didn't do any reading yesterday because I had quite a busy day. I was at the pottery studio again in the morning because I can't go next week, so I had to catch up in advance with next week's lesson. And then the afternoon we worked on the living room renovation, and then in the evening we were just like exhausted, so we just watched some Love is Blind with my husband, which was really fun. So now it's a beautiful morning and it's past 10 a.m. I'm gonna crawl back in bed with my book. I had a bit of an agitated morning. My husband woke me up in a panic because a robin had flung itself inside the house and was lying on the kitchen ground. So woke me up to help him with that. And it's very likely that the bird hit a window. So now we've put a bunch of Post-it notes on the windows to make sure that the birds know that they're there and we don't have any more accidents. Took care of the robin. I wasn't very optimistic because he didn't look in great shape, but after it's not been even an hour, he flew away. Like I put him in a box with a little warm bottle to keep him warm and some shade and quiet, and after a while he flew away. So we're very happy and relieved that everything ended well. So now time for some cozy reading. Today is Tuesday and I don't remember the last time I actually checked in with you. I'm in my kitchen, which is a bit busy because the dishwasher is going and the washing machine is also going in the room next door. So I'm feeling a bit overwhelmed, to be honest. My house is a total mess. I think I already talked about that at the beginning of this vlog. And so the kitchen was really a battlefield. And so I've took up my courage with two hands this morning and cleaned it up, or started. So it's now all tidy on this side, but there's still many dishes over in the sink. It's pretty full, and that's all that didn't fit in the dishwasher or isn't going into the dishwasher. So to just give you a sense of how bad things were. And now that I've done that, I don't have it in me to make proper food, so I'm having a protein shake, like a banana protein smoothie thing. So yeah, that's where we're at, keeping it real here. It's been a bit tough in the past few days. I have just like personal stuff that are leaving me feeling very overwhelmed. And again, the house is a mess because of the move and the living room renovation. I spent quite a bit of time on that, or mainly my husband, but that was a bit of the focus during the weekend. And I ended up not reading that much. Yesterday, tried to distract myself from the overwhelm and from my husband also being away for work by filming a bunch of YouTube videos. Just after saying that I was going to slow down because I kind of needed to find my motivation again. Well, I guess needing a distraction is a very good motivation. So I did that yesterday. Finally got to 100 pages in Blood of a Bright Heaven and finished the first 5 chapters. Took a while to get there, even though I'm really enjoying the book, but I've been very slow. And so this morning I had an email from Melanie giving me her thoughts about those 5 first chapters, which I was very excited to read. And I also shared mine with her. So my arm is getting a bit achy. I'm gonna switch spots and tell you a bit more about what I think so far about the book. I'm now in my living room devoid of any wallpaper. We're making progress. Alfred is waking up. Actually just called the vet this morning because Alfred has daily medication to take. And the last batch we ordered, we got a different one. And it's usually my husband giving him his meds, and he just trusted the vet. And because he's away, I've been giving him his meds for since yesterday. And I still felt like it's a bit weird that it's not the same pills as usual. So I called them, and turns out that they gave us a very different med, a very different type. But at least now I got it and we can revert back to the right treatment. It's going to be fine, but yeah, it's a bit annoying. But I was supposed to talk to you about Blood of a Bright Heaven, which I am really enjoying so far. Again, I thought the first chapter was so impactful and very well done, very gut-punching. So that was a very strong start. And then after that first chapter, we switched to our female main character, Siona, I'm gonna call her Siona. And she's quite an interesting character. She's obviously very smart. She worked really, really hard. She's very driven and hungry. And she's a pretty interesting character because she's in this society that's very misogynistic. Is that the word? And she is fighting against that, but at the same time, she has her own prejudices. She's very much the product of her culture as well. So when there is a character from a background or kind of ethnical group that's been very much discriminated against in this society, you can see very clearly that she also holds those prejudices against him. And obviously, her being the main character, the whole setup and all of that, you kind of expect her to overcome that as the plot moves on. And she already shows signs of being a bit more open-minded than a lot of people in her society. But I quite appreciated this complexity of just because she's a woman and she's being discriminated against doesn't mean that she's this perfect advocate and activist, and she's aware that she is a intersectional feminist or anything. No, she's very much not. She is selfish in some ways. She has a lot of flaws, but she again is quite a complex character. I think there are also signs that she might be neurodivergent, which I'm very excited about. Things like being given a deadline for something, she counts it in month and then the number of weeks and then the number of days that she has until that deadline, which is not something that most people do, I would say. And it's also mentioned that she is kind of lacking in terms of social skills. She seems to have this very deep-rooted sense of justice or what is right and wrong, and even though, again, she has those prejudices and she's very much a product of that culture. And so, yeah, she's very much showing signs of being neurodivergent. And I think that's really cool. Again, that adds a layer to that character, which I'm really enjoying. And what else can I say without spoilers? I think the world building is so far excellent. There is a lot. It's a very deep and detailed world with a lot of moving factors. And Alfred, t'as besoin de sortir?
A few moments later.
I was talking about the world building, and yeah, I think the word that comes to mind for me is crisp. It's very sharp and detailed, and yeah, it's really good. It's again a lot of information. You have a lot of complexity on the political side, on the religion side, on the different social groups, the technology/magic system, and it's given to us in brushstrokes in a way that it's very digestible. You see or you sense very much depth into the world building that makes it feel very real, and at the same time you're not feeling overwhelmed. Alfred coming back. That's the washing machine triggering the bell. Anyway, today is very much chaotic.
One eternity later.
Yeah, as I was saying, today is a bit chaotic. My husband is away and Alfred is being very old. It's quite a bit of maintenance, let's say. Anyway, what else do I have to say about the book? So I'm really enjoying the world building and the complexity of the world and the way that we are discovering it in a way that's not overwhelming. At the same time, I don't know if it's my historical shortcomings, but I have a hard time kind of really picturing some aspects, because in some ways it feels like an old world in the sense that it's set in what would be our past by a few centuries, and in other ways it feels quite modern. So kind of the expectations about women to get married, to not live alone, to not be alone with men, those kind of things feels very like a Jane Austen time. And then it's still, you have this contrast between it being a very religious society but also very advanced in technological ways, which is an interesting contrast. But again, one side gives it more of an ancient feel than the other. And maybe what's throwing me off the most is some of the language. There are some expressions at times that feel very modern, like everyone and their mother thinks that, or something like that. So it's a weird mix. I think also the author uses the word conduit quite a bit for the magic system, and it's basically just, it can be any kind of random object that's used to hold kind of a spell. And for me, just the word is very much charged and just makes me think of steampunk for some reason. Like for me, a conduit is almost like a pipe or something. So she keeps using that word, and it could be any kind of object, but for me it's like pipes everywhere. And so I have this kind of steampunk image in my mind. So it's all a weird blend, and again, it might just be a me thing. But yeah, it's really fun so far, and I'm really curious to learn more. I already have a theory about the magic system, and I'm very curious to see if I'm somewhat right or if I'm completely left field. But yeah, it's been fun, and I look forward to reading more. I'm in a bit of a different location today because I'm visiting my mom for a week. So you saw me reading on the train, and I read up to chapter, and this part was so good. I think it's chapter where we have a bit of a philosophical discussion between our two main characters, and I thought this chapter was excellent. I really enjoyed it. I really appreciated the kind of debate going on between them, and yeah, I think it's really fun. I really enjoy that. So that was really good. And then next chapter, something happened, and I think I mentioned in one of my previous check-in about the book that I already had a bit of a theory about, And it turned out to be true, and I'm very proud to have figured that out very, very early in the book. I think chapter 3, I already had this theory in mind, and yeah, it's really, really cool, and I'm really excited. So I'm having such a fun time with this book, and so I'm looking forward to diving a bit more and reading what comes next. As I mentioned at the beginning, I started this book fairly slowly, even though I was enjoying it a lot. But then by the end, I just binged it and read the second half very, very quickly, to the point that I needed a few days after finishing it to gather my thoughts. But very quickly things were a bit blurry because I read it so fast. But it's been 2 weeks now since I finished the book, and I'm still a bit unsure about what I think. I still have things that are unresolved, and part of it is again because I read it probably too fast. But overall, I did really appreciate this book. There are a lot of things that I loved. Mainly the world building, I think, was really interesting. I think from all the first part of the book, it was so impressive how everything was so tightly built and everything made sense. And the way the world was built felt just inevitable. It just all tied together so nicely, and there was really a sense of purpose and direction of what the author was doing. I also really loved the characters of Sayona and Tomil. I think they were both complex and interesting. They both held, in the beginning, very opposite views on certain topics of religion and right and wrong, but then you see how they influence each other and how their worldview change, and that was really nice. I really appreciate that part of their character development. There were also some specific chapters in the book that I truly loved and I truly felt were masterful. I already talked about the first chapter. I mentioned some chapters around the middle section. I'm not gonna say exactly which ones because I think some people would consider it a spoiler. And also the very ending of the book. I really, really loved it. That part surprised me in a very good way. And yeah, I really appreciated how the author went to kind of tie up or resolve the end of her story and wrap things up. And I also really loved being able to predict the big twist. I got a really big kick out of it. And it's nice because not everybody does. So for some people it's a surprise and it's a big wow moment. And then when you go back, you can see the clues and all the hints and the foreshadowing that's been displayed. But when you guessed it, it's also like very joyful and very fun and just picking up all those elements as you go. That being said, the second part of the book didn't wow me in the same way as the first did. I was a bit disappointed, I would say, about the part that goes from maybe the 60-70% mark until the 90%, so toward just before the very end of the book. And I might go into some spoiler territory, so I will mark that on the screen so that you can skip ahead if you don't want any spoilers. I will try to summarize my thoughts first without spoilers and then go a bit more detail when I need to. So on the things that I didn't enjoy as much in that second part, I felt that the plot became more predictable. Like there were specific beats that we expect the book to hit, and it went right there and didn't have that surprise effect. So I think it was for the kind of spectacle of it, and you want to have tension rising and stakes being upped and all of that. But yeah, that part felt somewhat predictable and kind of expected, so that was a little bit disappointing. I thought that some characters felt like caricatures also in that second hand and very much run into shape to just make a point, which leads to the idea that the themes in this book are not very subtle. And this is not necessarily a bad thing in itself. I think it's very much a taste thing. I think personally I prefer when things are a little bit less hammered on your head and that you as a reader have a bit more work to do to figure things out. I don't like things to be completely obtuse either, so I think there is like a middle ground to find. But yeah, for me that was maybe a bit too much, but at the same time, I did appreciate it in the first half of the book, and I did think that the character development, the main characters, at least Sayona and Tomil, really helped me swallow that pill. So it wasn't too bad. And then now going into spoiler territory, so if you want to skip that, just move on to the next section. I will have that time stamped in the video, so you can move on. And hopefully now that you're gone, I can go into some spoilers. So very much the magic system being based on siphoning life from outside the city is bound to be depleting resources. And the whole thing felt like a metaphor, thinly veiled metaphor for our own world and how we are just eating ourselves up, eating the world up, and just depleting resources and destroying the planet. And I was surprised with how some other themes in the book weren't subtle at all about the whole discussion about good and bad and finding truth and all of that. I was surprised that this aspect of depleting resources wasn't more explored and more explicit, considering again how some themes were just hammered over your head. And there are some small mentions, like one of the archmages talks about expanding the coordinates for siphoning, and there is also talk about the Quen dying not only from the blight itself, but from just animals and resources being siphoned. So yeah, that was a bit surprising to me that this aspect wasn't more explored, because it felt again like a very direct metaphor. And then the other thing that bothered me quite a bit was the whole mirrors revelation. So Sayona just showing the blight and showing the siphoning to everyone in the city, and people immediately kind of rioting. And I don't think it's very clear in the book how much random people would know about how the magic works, because on one hand we know that Alba, Sayona's cousin, did used to repair spellographs, so she knows how to work on them, and we know that they learn about magic from a young age in school because Sayona did. And then we have this little girl at the beginning asking her to sign her textbook and all of that. At the same time, the magic is very restricted. Power is held very tightly by the High Magistry. And so spellographs are not allowed outside of the High Magistry, which makes the whole Alba thing a bit weird. And so that made me think, again, that normal people outside of the Magistry would not have a very strong understanding in how the magic works. And so how do they understand what they are seeing when the mirror appears, showing them the blight and the siphoning? How do they understand what's going on? I understand that there would be kind of upheaval or just turmoil in the city because of the shock of it, of the violence that they are seeing and that they are not comprehending. But also I would imagine that it would not make sense to them. Maybe they would immediately think that it's black magic or dark magic or a curse. And propaganda would immediately step in and find a story to tell that would benefit the High Magistry and stop that rebellion and just get people to calm down and understand that maybe this is, like, again, a curse that someone released, but it's nothing they have to worry about or something. Obviously, the Quen people who came to Tehran and experienced the blight would recognize it as the blight and might talk to other people. But again, they wouldn't have the magic knowledge to understand that the blight is actually siphoning and is what is powering their magic. Simply because we see, like, Tomil understands it, but he's been working with Sayona and learning a lot about magic for months. And Sayona herself is not able to understand what she's seeing, and if Tomil wasn't there, she wouldn't understand that she's seeing the Quen and that she's seeing the blight. So that whole thing makes me think that random people wouldn't understand. And again, propaganda would step in and provide an explanation before they're able to understand what's going on and to rebel and have this revolution happening in the streets. So that part I didn't really understand and really didn't feel was believable. At the same time, you needed something grand to happen, and you needed something to happen to provoke change in the city. Otherwise, I think the book would have gone into a very bleak direction and very dark place. So in a way, I'm kind of glad and grateful that it went toward a more hopeful direction and opening the door to potential positive change in the future. And I also appreciate that, again, like we see real consequences for Sayona's action, which is nice. Like there is no plot armor in this story, so that I really enjoy that. But I didn't think the thing was totally believable or totally made sense. So that's it for all my spoilery thoughts. I think there's a lot more that I could say, but I didn't set out to do a whole video essay. I just wanted to do a cozy reading vlog and share my impressions about this book. Overall, I'm very glad I read it. I did find a lot of it very impressive and very masterful. So it's not a new absolute favorite for me, but it's still a book that I have a lot of respect for, that I really enjoyed reading. And again, it has some chapters that I found absolutely excellent and really, really impressive. So it's just a bit of a shame that it didn't hold that level throughout the book, and that the last act kind of lacked a little bit for me. But overall, again, I think there is so much good in this book. It's quite different to a lot of other things I've read. It reminds me a bit of Babel by R.F. Kuang. It's also a book that I like. Babel, it's a book I didn't like because it was kind of hammering its theme over your head, but also I couldn't relate to the characters. So that's one thing that Blood of a Bright Heaven did really well. I think the main characters felt real and felt complicated and had their contradictions, and it was really nice to see them interact. I think the second part was a bit of a letdown because in the first part, you have a lot of conversations. You very much see Sayona's thought process, and it's really, really cool to just see her thinking unfold in front of you on the page. And in the second part of the book, to avoid kind of spoiling the big things that are going to happen, you don't have that as much. And I think that's maybe also one of the things that made that section of the book less appealing to me and a bit disappointing, because then those big things happen and I'm just like not fully convinced by how they went, even though again they're kind of expecting plot beats. It's an interesting book. I like that I have contradicting feelings about it because it also reflects the complexity of that book, which I do appreciate. So overall, quite a fun reading experience. I'm so happy that I buddy read it with Melanie over at A Dark Corner of the Library. And I hope you enjoyed this vlog. And if you've read Blood of a Bright Heaven, let me know what you thought in the comments. I would love to have a conversation going there. As always, thank you so much for watching, and I hope to see you in the next one. Bye bye.